Welcome, everyone. Last time we were together, we talked about the basic language of music. And so now comes the time where we're going to apply that knowledge to the chronological portion of our course. So now comes the history. Now comes all the wonderful music you're going to hear, and we're going to apply some of the definitions that we learned during the last couple of classes. And also, the instruments will take a little longer to evolve, but eventually they're going to pop up section by section. Now, through the study of arts in relation to life, in relation to history, we're going to have, I hope, a broader and deeper humanistic understanding of the arts all the way around. The arts, of course, are a study of people reflected in the ever-changing images of men and of women as they journey across historical time. And that is something we will look very closely at. We're going to see their search for reality and how they have continually, artists continually strive to achieve the ideals that create the meaning for life. Art is what makes us human, so we will deal with great human history, a history of the world according to art. Now, what you see on your screen in front of you are the style periods. And so right now, I'd just like to organize your mind a little bit. This is how the course will proceed. And these are the basic dates. Now, lots of people can argue, the Renaissance started in, 1420 or whatever. These are general dates. And what's so interesting to me, actually, is all that transition that happens. How is it that we get from the Baroque to the Classical or the Romantic to the 20th century? How can we put our finger on that? So the transitions are always very interesting as well. So please know that we'll have transitional periods, and I'll talk about them quite a bit. So we begin with the Middle Ages, starting with the fall of the Roman Empire. And, 1,000 years of history in that Middle Ages, and that's a very long time. Notice how short the rest of them are. They'll get shorter and shorter. The Renaissance, 1400 to 1600. The Baroque, 150 years, 1600 to Bach's death, which is 1750. The Classical period, 1750 to 1820. Beethoven died in 1827. And the Romantic period, 1820, only 80 years up until the 20th century. And of course, we will study the 20th century and maybe a little bit of the 21st century. I've declined to put that up there, and I really should. So, I guess the next thing we do is we figure out where it all begins. Where does music, or art, begin? Anybody know? Art has existed from the beginning. Now, when is the beginning? Well, let's not go there. But we certainly know that the earliest instruments can be traced back to 18,000 BC. We know from writings of the Greeks, writings in the Bible, that we know music existed. We know art existed from the drawings on the walls of the pyramids. We know it existed. It is human history. Of course, we have no recordings to prove this. We do have some ancient instruments. We do have some ancient arts, certainly. We know that music was a form, and still is, of communication, of entertainment, and of religious rite. And in this class, we're going to look at all of those. Right? We're going to certainly look at the church. We're going to look at the church throughout, from the Middle Ages, from the fall of the Roman Empire, from the birth of Christianity, all the way through to now, because the church has always supported music. Prehistoric man probably, I say probably, hummed some sort of mastodon hunting song. Some sort of mastodon hunting song. Can you imagine that? Going out of your cave, I'm going to go kill a mastodon, whatever that is, I don't even know. And his little cave son or daughter goes out and bangs on an ancient drum, and the cave wife is in there drawing on the walls. It existed, we know it. We just have to find out where it was what? Written down. And that's what's very important. When was music written down? Where can we trace this history? And that's very, very important. Without some method of notation, right? The preservation of music depended on what? Depended on oral tradition, right? Do you ever remember seeing the music to Mary Had a Little Lamb or Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star? No, it is just something we learned. And so this is how music was passed on. So again, where do we start? I believe, now your book is not going to start there, and so you have in your study guides, as you will see, a little bit of information about the Greco-Roman civilization. We are going to keep going back to the Greco-Roman civilization, and we still do today. Don't we look to these great philosophers and geniuses, great people, great ideas? Heck, their architecture was certainly better than ours, right? It's still standing, a lot of it. So we must look at them not only for life and thought, but their life and thought was bound up in the arts. And they made a lot of progress in so many different areas, and I also find it very fascinating. The Greco-Roman civilization extended from the glorious age of Pericles, when Greek culture reached its height, its zenith. It witnessed the expansion of Greek settlements under Alexander the Great, saw the rise of Roman power and the grandeur of the Roman Empire, and concluded with its decline and fall in 476. The great philosophers such as Socrates and Sophocles were men of action who served Athens on the battlefield as well as in the public forums and the theaters. They were very well-rounded people. One responsibility of a citizen was to foster the arts. All the arts of Greece became a generating force by which Athenians consciously or unconsciously identified with their fellow citizens and with the entire rhythm of life about them. And through the arts, human experience is raised to its highest level. This is what they believed, and I think they had the right idea. The individual is able to see the world in the light of universal values. So you see, the arts were bound up in the moral person. It is really compelling how some of these wonderful men of Athens referred to the word music. Aristotle. Music has the power of producing certain effect on the moral character of the soul. And if it has the power to do this, it is clear that the young must be educated in it. And here we go. The Greeks had a system of public education. And what they thought an educated person should have within that system is music. The balance between music on one hand, something for the mind, and gymnastics, one for the body. Aristotle goes on to state that music is a moral law. It gives soul, this is my favorite, by the way, listen closely. This sums up a lot of what I feel about music. It gives soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, a charm to sadness, gaiety and life to everything. It is the essence of order and leads to all that is good, just, and beautiful, of which it is the invisible, but nevertheless dazzling, passionate, and eternal form. I believe they really knew this, that music was a moral law. It's way beyond. It's about philosophical reflection. It's about so many things. No other city No other city, until maybe we talk about Florence in the Renaissance, can claim to have been home to such genius over such a brief period of time. In the middle of the 3rd century BC, Romans had brought the Italian peninsula under their control and expanded their empire over the next century. And so we will see how the decline and fall happens. Okay? Now, what is also interesting is they not only did they use music in their system of public education, but they also used it where? In their incredible dramas and tragedies. Dramas and tragedies. Within their dramas and tragedies, we have music. Oh, where is the music? Well, actually, the Greeks believed music and words were basically one thing. Poetry and music were the same. But we also have the chorus. The chorus that often put interesting commentary in on the drama. They often unified the drama. And we actually have surviving examples, about 15 surviving examples of these choruses, which also added some type of music, some kind of accompaniment or something like that. Now, not only did we have the Greeks giving us some interesting things within the tragedies and the dramas, but we also have power, right? What did the Greeks believe? What was their religion? Gods, what does that mean? They were pagan. Pagan, right? They believed in gods and demigods and goddesses, and certainly their gods was the god of music. And the god of music, and music itself, could heal. It could heal the sick. It could give power to your mind. So of course it had these supernatural qualities to it. Also, they had a system of notation. Now, pardon the pun, but it's Greek to us, right? But historians have deciphered it. And so, not only did they use music in a lot of different places, but they also developed their system of notation. Now, that system is going to move which direction? To the west. And you see, we're going to learn so much from this civilization. Okay? Let me scroll down here. So, what do we have? Again, just to review. System of public education, we had music. We had music could heal the sick. It gave power to the body, right? And it was within their dramas and tragedies. We also have fragmentary examples for proof that this did exist. We certainly have visual representations of musical instruments on these beautiful ancient artifacts that certainly have been uncovered. If we combine all of these sources together, we have a faint notion about what Greek music was like and how they used it. Okay? Now, what about the Romans? The Romans. Well, here we go with the Romans. Now, unfortunately, a lot has been lost. And most of what has survived was a lot of orgy music, military music, things like that. And that's about it. With the fall of Rome, a lot of Roman music was lost. Now, so we come to the fall of the Roman Empire, okay? We come to the fall of the Roman Empire. Destruction. Okay, destruction. Now I'm going to throw this out to you. With the process of destruction came the opposite process of creation. With the process of destruction came the opposite process of creation. And that creation is going to become the only bond that this very dark, dark time will have. This was a time of war, of migration, of upheaval. Nothing settled. And what we have as this creation is the emerging Christian religion. The emerging Christian religion. Now, of course, this took a long time. Christianity appeared on the scene way before 476. And I had a wonderful opportunity to visit the catacombs in Rome. And this was a place that was really quite frightening to me and to anybody who would go down there. But there are just basically graves from top to bottom, and this is where Christians were buried. But what's so interesting and so important about the catacombs was this was also a place where they worshiped. They weren't allowed to worship. They were persecuted. And of course, they stuck together and stuck to their religious beliefs, and eventually the church is going to take over with Rome's decline and fall. And as the church organizes itself, here we have it. Yes, we're in the Middle Ages. We're in medieval self-denial. One of the major downfalls of art is Christianity. Why? Everybody put on your clothes. It's time to not be naked for a long time. Right? Look at those beautiful Greek gods. You know, the beautiful body that was worshipped. No more. We are now going to the spiritual. Heresy, my friends, at this point, very real. You don't want to go against the church. And as we'll see, this church becomes very organized. And now we have the beginning of Western music. Why? Because we have educated people. These educated people were the clergy. We had three classes of people. We had the very rich, the nobility, who were living in their castles and their moats, right? But they were illiterate. We had the very poor, the peasants. They too illiterate. And we had the clergy. And the clergy monopolized learning, and they will do this for a very, very long time. Okay? So here's where we start our history of Western music, because this is where the church becomes organized. And you know what? Those monks finally wrote music down. They organized the music of the church. Does that mean anything was going on the outside, in the secular world? Oh, yes, definitely. Those songs passed on from oral tradition, those poor people had instruments, right? Either they were handmade, passed on from generation to generation, but of course there was music outside. But the music inside the church is going to be written down. It is decipherable, okay? And we're going to see how that happens. Literature and scholarship kept alive by monks in their isolated monasteries. By the year 900, the church stabilizes, and there's an amazing period of artistic growth. We're going to watch that happen. Music is going to flourish not only in churches, but also in courts as well. It's going to take a long time to develop. Right now, we're still in the fall of the Roman Empire. You know, a good 500 years to become organized. And there's a lot of interesting things that happen with this organization. Around the year 1000, what are you going to see start popping up on the landscape? Those gorgeous Gothic cathedrals. We will find universities popping up as well. The church will become unstable by then, but people will become educated, and that's what happens. If you watch the history of the church, as soon as As soon as the church becomes unstable, people become educated. As soon as the church becomes unstable, composers get to do what they want. Nobody's looking. So we're going to follow that, right? We're going to follow that. We're going to see what happens with art when the church is stable or unstable. And just like I told you at the beginning, we're going to follow that and see what happens around the artist. Okay? And so the church survived to become a powerful voice in the area of politics, social behavior, learning, and of course, art as well. And again, we have a sharp division between three main social classes, and this is going to be there certainly for a while. But we will see as we go up towards the year 1000, the middle class will start to develop. People will have more education. So we'll see things change quite a bit. All segments of society felt the powerful influence of the church. The church was the center of musical life as well, of course. The development of Western music is inseparably linked with the music of the Catholic Church. Most musicians were priests or monks. The function of music at this point, as we see the development of the Christian church, is the spirit of worship. That's it. That's what you should be. That's the way you should run your life. Okay? Most medieval music, of course, vocal, and there's always a conflict in the Middle Ages about instruments, right? We're going to see those wonderful organs start to pop up all over the place, and instruments, but you know, people were very careful about taking an instrument into church because church was to contribute to the spirit of worship. So, the earliest kind of music was that of the church. And specifically, this kind of music was called chant. C-H-A-N-T, chant. Chant, the official music of the Catholic Church. And this was the music that started to be written down, little by little, of course, passed on by oral tradition at first, but then it started to be written down. It enhanced the spirit of worship. Some people say it sounds like a swarm of bees, but hopefully you won't. Now, there's quite an interesting otherworldly quality about chant. Can we go to a concert and listen to 2 hours of chant? Oh my God, no. And just sit there? No. Maybe. I don't know. I couldn't. It would relax me so much. It's a good music to use to meditate, to study with even. But it is very interesting. It contributes now to the spirit of worship. 5 characteristics of chant. Men's voices. There were women, of course, and there were women over in the convent, and we'll talk about them a little bit. Men's voices, Latin words, the official language of the Catholic Church, Latin. And if you went in there and spoke any other language at this point, again, you'd get your hand cut off or something, right? Latin. So if you guys hear Latin, I'll put it right out to you now. If you hear Latin, if you see Latin, it's gonna be sacred music. Okay? Latin. Flexible rhythm. It is very free-flowing. There's no sense of beat at all. You don't want a sense of beat when you're trying to be spiritual, right? It's not about that yet. There is no accompaniment, and very important, people, here's our first real big word, it's monophonic. It is a one-line melody with beautiful curves, no harmony, and the reason why it sounds different from the music that we listen to today is because the scale patterns are different. We don't have our major-minor system yet. What we have is a system of modes, as in pi a la mode. Write this down, M-O-D-E-S, modes, okay? Modes. You will never be tested on it, but I just want you to know that that exists. And that's one of the reasons why it contributes to spirit. It is spiritual. It sounds different. Let me play for you a Dorian scale, the Dorian mode. This is what it sounds like. It starts on D. Ready? me play you a D major scale that starts on D. So we're going up quite a bit in time. Listen. That's a major scale. Now, the Dorian mode. Okay? So that's why chant sounds different than what we're used to. Their scales are called modes. Okay? And again, all of these were eventually notated. Now, before I go any further, I want you to listen to what this chant, what this style of singing, too, sounds like. Okay? And the example I am giving you, okay, is simply an alleluia. Okay? Heard that word before? And I want you to listen to it. And we're going to talk about it, and we're actually going to listen to it one more time. Okay? And so this is alleluia. All I want you to listen for are the 5 characteristics in front of you. Men's voices, Latin words, no accompaniment, flexible rhythm, and it's a 1-line melody.
Alleluia. Alleluia.
So, there's your flexibility. It almost sounds like it's improvised. You know what I mean? By improvise, make it up as you go along. And that's because there's really no sense of beat at all.